money.
Big money.
Take,
I see him on television.
when you go, take money.
Keep your hands stuck in your pocket. Don't scratch your head.
It's a call to order the local planning agency meeting for April 10th. Start off by calling the roll.
Chairman Byrd,
Here.
Don Colapetro,
Here.
Sam Vincent,
Here.
Bob Finnis.
Here.
Rex Sims.
Here.
Fred Forbes.
Here.
Carolyn Gallagher.
Here.
Okay, first item is a review of the ordinance for consistency with the City of Bonita Springs Comprehensive Plan. Audrey?
Thank you. For the record, Audrey Vance, City Attorney. I have the affidavit of publication that this was advertised in the Fort Myers News Press as a public hearing, and we'll proceed with the title block reading. And the affidavit of publication is legally sufficient. This is an ordinance of the City of Bonita Springs, Florida, amending the City of Bonita Springs Comprehensive Plan as adopted by ordinance number 02-16 as amended so as to update the potable water sub-element of the infrastructure element and the capital improvements element to coordinate with the South Florida Water Management District's Lower West with the South Florida Water Management District's Lower West Coast Water Supply 2012 Plan update and including a 10-year water supply facilities work plan as required by Florida statutes, Section 163, 3177, 6C, providing for transmittal to the State Land Planning Agency, providing a conflicts clause and severability clause, and providing an effective date, and for other purposes. This is the reading before the LPA. The ordinance is scheduled before City Council at their April 16th and May 7th meetings. I have both Kim Hoskins here from Bonita Springs Utilities, who can provide you with some information as to the data and analysis as to the update, as well as John Dolmer, who is taking the place of Jackie Genson, who worked on this ordinance from staff perspective. There are some changes, and I'll just briefly go over them. This is, first of all, a technical update. It is a requirement by state statute to have this update 18 months after South Florida Water Management District updates its Lower West Coast Regional Water Supply Plan. They did so in November 2012. So given the dates, it's about due, I guess, in June or May 2014. And under this, the last time we updated the plan was in 2009. There are some changes to the plans. The biggest change, I believe, was that Glade Haven facility was removed physically, so that it's no longer out there. That sewer system and water system. Citrus Park still is a facility, and the information from Citrus Park was obtained through a 2013 water use permit application. So we don't have as much data as we would like, but we use the data that we did have. You can only update based on what you have. You can't update if people aren't forthcoming. The two capital improvement projects that were indicated that are now removed from the system or from the update, because they can be removed from the update because they were already built, is the one on Windsor Road and Snell Lane. There's updating existing data to, I believe, 2025, as well as changes in population growth calculation. There also was revisions to reflect changes in state law, where it was referred to as Department of Community Affairs. I probably still will call it DCA in my sleep, but it is now DEO, Department of Economic Opportunity. Okay. And taking out discussion of Rule 9J5, because there is no such thing as Rule 9J5 anymore. Also, other projects were completed as to the water supply CIP, so you just see some X'd out pages there. John and Kim can provide you with any questions. I did receive comments from Carolyn Gallagher, things that were typographical. There was a hyphen in a word that shouldn't be there. I'm looking at Dawn Colapietro because she might have beat you at that punch, and there was
Usually
a
that's
spelling
Dawn's.
error.
Usually Dawn does that, yeah.
Yes, and there's part where it used, something picked up where it said mileage instead of millage, which happens, but that probably was picked. I added that to my dictionary, so if spell check, kept correcting it, and now has that word millage in there. There were some other changes that she recommended that deal with calculations, and for that I really need Kim or John to work on.
Okay, thank you. Any comments? John?
No, so the city attorney outlined this very well. This is an item that we have to submit to the state. The state does not make a distinction between utilities that are controlled by a municipality and those that are private nonprofits like we have in Bonita Springs. So even though we do not control Bonita Springs utilities, their improvements and their calculations have got to be included in our comprehensive plan. When we do this, generally we sit down with representatives from BSU and ask them, what do you plan to do? How do you want this phrased? What do you want in our plan so it accommodates your improvements? And that's what we have done in this case. If you see addition errors, subtraction errors, grammatical errors, those are things that we can change, but by the time we're finished, there needs to be a document that we send off to the state to meet our requirements.
Okay, thank you. Any comments?
I have a general comment. Seems I'm losing my voice this morning. I'm speaking about the backup material that came from BSU and Citrus Park. I understand that the backup material will be included somewhere in the comp plan as a backup. I personally believe it should address Bonita Springs only, not less than Bonita Springs, not more than Bonita Springs. So what I'm speaking about is it should be based on Bonita Springs numbers without the piece that goes all the way up to Williams Road. It should include Citrus Park because Bonita Springs is the governing body for Citrus Park. And I did notice in looking at this, it just jumped out at me, was that in many places in this backup material, it does address Citrus Park, and then there are very obvious places where it doesn't. And I think we need to either put in a sentence in there and say why, or put in the information. There's over 3,000 people, I guess, in Citrus Park, and that's about 4%, I think, of our population. So I think we need to address that. I don't think all that needs to be fixed today. I think we can make a better document, and I think we can do it in the next week or so without having to go, hash out everything right now. As we go along today, I'm going to point out some of those as we go through it. As I'm assuming we're going to go through it. I'll point out some of those places in particular where I had a problem.
You want to do that now?
Well, were we going to go into the backup first and then do the comp plan words, or were we going to start with the comp plan words and then do the backup?
Well, I think it's just a general discussion, wherever we want to go. If you want to cover your portion of it now, I don't see any reason why we can't.
We can, or we can cover it page by page and pick up everybody's comments.
Okay?
That's kind of what I envisioned.
Before we start, can I ask a general question?
Sure.
And I think I know the answer, but I want to make sure. There's nothing in this that would, for example, set the stage for the sale of 227 acres of BSU's land or anything like that.
What we're dealing with here is the ability for Bonita Springs utilities to obtain water, dealing with their ability to treat water and then treat the wastewater that comes back in.
Right.
It does not deal with well field protection or future land use.
All right. Okay. Well, I was positive that was the answer because Audrey more or less told us that the other day, but I asked the question for the benefit of the viewing audience.
I'm glad we had a second answer.
Yeah. Now, is it my understanding that this is dealing only with potable water?
And also with sanitary sewer. Yes, sir.
Sanitary sewer, okay. All right. Carolyn, you want to start off?
Sure. Well, I'm beginning, I don't know how your pages are numbered. I had several copies of this. This would be on page 4 of the 47 that I have.
Mm-hmm.
And it does start out telling you that the BSU supplies approximately 90% of water needs, and Citrus Park with the remaining 4%. I think that's a good, good start. But it then begs some questions further on. Down under operational responsibility, there is a table. And I think originally, I think I had found an error. Was that where I found the error in the table? But I think that there are several questions that I had on this table. When it talks about, starting with the title, existing, is that 2013, or is that supposed to be extrapolated to 14 or 15? And future, we've got zeros there. I wonder what year that is. I did talk to John, and he says, I kind of gleaned that in the future, which is a nebulous number year, that maybe Citrus Park is not going to be there. But I think we maybe need to clarify that.
I
Is
think
that-
it, doesn't it looks to me like that's the expansion portion.
That is just the expansion portion?
Yeah, because as far as I know, that they're built out as far as the RV sites and the mobile home sites.
Okay,
It would be a future additional.
Right, so I don't think they have any more room for it.
good, because I didn't understand that, and I think that clarifies it.
The single
Or I
family,
thought
they still have a
that's
lot
what
of
I
land.
said to you on the phone, so.
Okay. And maybe you did, John. Also, I thought that perhaps we should start and put a total horizontal line there under single family and just make total, because that, the number of the population, which is 3348, which is not shown here, is picked up in another place in the chart. I mean, in the document. When I was back in the document reading that, I'm saying, where did they get that number from? And then I wandered back through this chart, and I said, oh, I had to add them up. So I think it kind of ties things together if you just have a total in there.
Okay.
That would be the other place it's referenced. That total is on page 16. And I think they referenced the wrong number.
Right, the two numbers, now remember that while preparing these, the numbers changed sometimes.
Well,
So we'll have staff look at those numbers to make sure they reconcile.
it's the part in the middle of the page that's not on, that's an explanation that's not on the charts on
Right, I
page
have-
16. Yeah.
It's, where it says population of Bonita Springs less population of Citrus Park, Glade Haven, of course, was removed, divided by .84, and then it's done the mathematical equation. And it's the numbers to get to the basis, the population, and then the Citrus Park population. And then, of course, the math should work out theoretically. once-
Yeah, and they have on here 3336, and it should be 3348.
Right, there's 12 off.
Okay.
Small numbers, but nonetheless,
All
if you're
right.
going to say it, you
Yeah.
probably should be right.
Right.
Could I ask a question before
Sure,
we go?
again.
Why is it again that Citrus Park's in this?
This is, oh, do you want to answer?
They have been providing their own water from their
Okay.
inception, and they were there prior to Bonita Springs Utilities.
What
Right.
about the sewer?
This is the same.
Same.
They have their own package plant.
So there's another private sewer plant, a big one in Bonita Springs.
Yes, and this document shows that they provide both their water and wastewater service.
Wait a second, yeah, that's Citrus Park. You're talking about there's another one?
Yep.
Are you
Is
talking,
it
Not
Hunter's
Glade Haven.
Ridge?
Hunter's Ridge has their own system?
It's not potable water, though, is it?
No, we only do the treating of
For
the sewage.
irrigation?
Yeah,
So it's
Oh,
not
you
in
do your
here.
sewer treatment?
yep.
News to me.
There's 550 doors plus the commercial accounts of the clubhouse and all
And
that.
it's not something that's been tied into BSU?
Nope.
Okay, I'm giving Kim that look. She's giving me the look.
I'm just,
All right.
All right, we'll
that's
take a
why
look
I'm
into
asking
it.
the question.
Yeah, it doesn't go to potable water, but that would go towards
No, this
sewer.
would be this treatment only.
Okay.
And then we use our own gray water or effluent.
Mr. Forbes will get with you to make sure that we have all the information before this
Yeah,
goes to City Council.
we'll be happy to give you anything you need for it.
And, you know, I don't think it changes BSU's calculation or Citrus Park's calculation, but it does
No.
need to be included to show.
No,
In the
right.
sewer portion.
Well, here's my point about getting everything. If we're going to do the city, we need to need all pieces of it. And maybe that population is counted in the city numbers, but now it's not counted in the numbers for the residential units and all that.
All right. Yeah, we do get our water from Bonita's utilities,
Yeah,
but not the
No, ma'am,
sewer.
it would not be included in the other one simply because they're using meter information for their numbers. So if there were no meters, then there would be no numbers.
Okay. Still, we would need some kind of a tweaking of this document to include it.
We would be including information that Mr. Forbes will hopefully provide to us in terms of their
Okay.
wastewater treatment, so it goes into the sanitary sewer sub-element.
Because my point is either include it all or just use BSU, but then you're missing a piece, some pieces. So
I
we
think
have to
we're on
make
the
that.
same page.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you get me the information you need, I'll get it right to you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Carolyn?
Okay. There's, on the next page, which, page 5, I didn't quite understand the second paragraph. I'm trying to see if that's the second, I guess it's the first and second, and I'm not quite sure how to explain that. But if you look at the residential connections and the average daily demand of, for BSU, 8.07, and you look down here at Citrus Park with 1626 ERC units, with, and you get 50 gallons per day. I think I'm reading that right. And the other in millions of gallons per day. If you look at those together and you multiply them out to look at the gallons, there's some real inconsistencies. I just think we need to look at the numbers. I need somebody who's a little bit more knowledgeable, maybe Kim. Not now, we'll maybe work it out later. But what I was getting was when I was multiplying it out, I was getting like so many billions of gallons of water for BSU and 81,000 gallons a day for Citrus Park. Doesn't make any sense. So,
Can I ask a question? Where'd the numbers come from, and is there anybody here that can help out on it?
They came from the permits that both of those water treatment plants have.
Okay.
Kim can answer anything specifically for BSU, but that's where we obtain the information for Citrus Park.
Okay.
so the GPD, that is gallons per day,
Right.
isn't it?
Right.
And the MGD is millions of gallons per day?
Correct.
Okay, so it just seemed like there was I realize it's less than 1%, the Citrus Park. I know it would be a small number, but that just didn't seem to go together. I would also suggest that even the calculations get with a lot of zeros, 0.000, but I would use one or the other, either MGD, which is probably the one you should use, or the gallons per day. And the gallons per day would be 0.0000. I think it's 4 zeros with a 5. But nonetheless, you're making apples and apples rather than apples and oranges. And if somebody's trying to follow this, that's hard. So that's just, I'm sorry, maybe
It's all
I'm
right.
being nitpicky. I think that was all on that page.
Yeah,
Does anybody else have comments as I go along?
I might be able to give a little illumination on what may be part of that discrepancy. Citrus Park, because they've got their own wells and things, I'm sure the water that they're putting out all over Citrus Park on the lawns, the common area, is straight well water, not treated. So it would be that may be part of it. They may be looking at how much they're treating versus what they're pumping. I don't know.
I don't know. It's interesting, it says 50 gallons per day, but later on, I read that it was like 220 gallons per person or per dwelling.
Per dwelling, and
gotta-
most of that has to do with irrigation. That is correct.
Okay, so that would be a real, okay.
Mr. Chairman, on that 50 gallons per day, you have to understand that you've got that 900 and some recreational vehicles in there. And their water usage is considerably less than a dwelling. Everything in an RV
Okay.
is suited for low gallon flow. I mean, I think the shower heads are something like, well, I don't know about all of them, but the one in ours is like 3 quarts a minute under 60 PSI. So that's entirely believable when you average it out, because there are far more
Okay.
RVs out there than there are dwellings.
And Mr. Chairman, on page 6, it jumps back to million gallons per day. They show as 0.52. So, they jump from 50, which may not be a problem at all, to the relationship of million gallons per day. So that is listed.
Okay.
So you think this is consistent with what they had on the previous page? It
I
doesn't
guess
seem
it
to
would
be to me.
It depend on the conversation that you're having, but whether it's 50 gallons per day or 0.52 million gallons per day, it's all the same.
Well, 50 gallons per day, this 0.5 million, that would be 500,000.
So what you're saying, the figures are wrong?
I don't know that they're wrong. I think that they're a little bit inconsistent. There's also the number on a chart on page 8 that says 0.51 MGD. So what is it? I don't know. I don't,
Well, you're mixing two different things up.
well, not on page 8.
On page 5, where you're looking at 50 gallons per day, that is the average daily demand per unit. When you were looking at the 0.52 million gallons per day, and then they talk about their plant capacity of 0.52 million gallons a day being reduced to 0.495, that has to do with the capacity to treat water. So you have a maximum capacity to treat, which is that
Okay.
millions of gallons per day number, and you're also looking at how many gallons per day the average unit uses. So that number that they can treat obviously needs to be higher than what their average use is to accommodate any peaks in demand.
All right.
Correct.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But it's hard for, so they treat, that is
That's
a
what
real
they're-
big multiple there, what they treat versus what they use. I mean,
But
that's
you want that.
that much, from 50 to
You-
500,000.
You don't want a deficit.
No, you wouldn't want a deficit, that's true, but that seems very large. I don't know.
And in terms of what they're permitting for their use, that is a number that Citrus Park management has to come up with and work with South Florida Water Management District to determine how much they're allowed to take and how much they should treat to meet that demand. That's entirely up to them. We can tell them that we think it's excessive, but that we are not the permitting agency. So therefore, we are simply acknowledging and reflecting their intentions and their permit with the Water Management District.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, but is it just possible this is an error here?
If the reporting on the district's website and their permit is listed incorrectly, yes, but I don't think that the district would have printed or published the permit with the wrong information.
Okay, well, I just pulled out things that I saw that I thought were either confusing or inconsistent. This number, the .520, also appears on page 8. If you would care to switch over there and look at that, and
Well,
maybe...
the .52 is what's permitted by the district. That doesn't necessarily mean they're doing it.
Correct.
That's
Okay,
their threshold.
okay. And then I think they were trying to quote the same number on page 8. And I'm trying to see where it is. Down at the bottom right-hand corner on the chart. So I think it's just a matter of making a change somewhere on one of those numbers.
What change?
Down at the bottom of page 8, we're still talking about .520 or .51. The last number, the last line of the chart, it says .51.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is the same thing as on the previous page 6. I think it's supposed to be reflecting the same number, but I'm not sure, maybe not.
I think that's just a rounding, rounded it down on one, rounded it up on the other.
Okay,
Whether-
I think
whether
it's just, I think they meant to have the same number, don't you?
And I'm fine with going either way on it because I think that it was based upon rounding. So if you want to change them both to .52 or change them both to .51,
Whatever you
it's gonna
decide, I would just suggest you
I'm
make them
okay
the
with
same.
that.
Is
Yeah, that's
one,
fine.
excuse me, is one a water treatment plant capacity and one a well capacity? Just asking.
Question it,
Yes.
Okay, I mean, that might be valid.
Yes.
is it, one is, say that again?
On page 6, I think what Kim is saying is that that's the treatment capacity. On page 8, the table says existing water treatment plant permitted well capacities. So what can you draw versus what can you treat?
Okay. All right.
You wouldn't treat everything you drew?
It depends on the form of treatment. For example, reverse osmosis, you withdraw a considerable amount of water, and it's only a percentage of it comes out as potable, and a certain percentage of it is wasted.
And you also, if you're using the same well for irrigation, you would be shuttling some off untreated too.
And for Citrus Park, I don't know their
I'm
situation.
confident they're
On
not.
Citrus Park doesn't do any irrigating. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, Citrus Park supposedly does not permit irrigating, using their treated water, because they don't want that water being wasted for irrigation purposes. But that's not to say people aren't doing it, but that's their rule. They don't want that potable water being wasted for irrigation. Now, whether they're using their existing lakes for irrigation, I don't know, but I'm almost positive that the last time I worked on that project, they didn't allow any irrigating at all. There's no irrigation lines in the ground that I know of.
I do not remember ever seeing sprinkler heads or irrigation being out there, but
No.
All right, Carolyn?
Okay. Going on to page 7, I would just suggest the Citrus Park is, any comments on Citrus Park are missing under letter E, distribution system. So, and there's some others on subsequent pages.
well, in terms
under
of the
G and
distribution
so on.
system, it goes back to the fact that there are not additional units that they're going to be putting out there. What they have in terms of a distribution system is the same today as it will be tomorrow, unless they come back in and amend their permits. And if
Okay.
they do that, then we would need to include additional information here.
Okay, but you've not addressed, you're just addressing new installations in this? Are you addressing all?
We've given the outline of what exists for Bonita Springs utilities, because while we do not have a municipally owned or controlled utility department, that is who operates for the city. Citrus Park is a private facility, which
BSU.
is not something that we have dug too deep to reflect, simply because they are not looking to make changes out there, and the lines that they have
Yeah.
will remain the same.
Well, I guess my point here is just, it seems to me it's an incomplete document without addressing the whole Bonita Springs. So that's why I thought at least a sentence or something in here addressing, because you address the water mains and so on and so forth, and you could say something about Citrus Park or why it's not being addressed. So throughout this document, that's what I see. So I think it would make it a better document if it covered the whole Bonita Springs. That's all. The next one down on public wells, just for curiosity, they do address where Citrus Park gets their water from the lower Tamiami Aquifer, but they don't say anything about where BSU gets theirs. I think that would be a nice addition. I did a little research. I understand it's lower Tamiami and upper Floridan. So maybe we could add that in.
Okay.
Then we would have there'd be a parallel structure there.
Let me see this one.
Okay, moving on to page 8. Just the top table doesn't have Citrus Park. This high service pumps doesn't have anything about Citrus Park. We already talked about the table, about not matching over there. You can look at that and decide. Okay, then flip over to,
I'm sorry,
Page 12.
which table were you saying did not include Citrus Park?
the one at the top,
Which,
1-2.
table 1-2.
Page 8.
I don't believe they have a storage tank.
Okay.
Yeah,
I would,
Yeah, they
I
do.
would say that, then
Yeah, they do. They do.
They do? Okay.
I would say they do or they don't, but, put something in here. Either a note at the bottom of the table or some information.
Can I ask a question here? I'm trying to understand all of this and getting confused here. Citrus Park is privately done. In other words, this is their systems. The only relationship to here is that they are people in the city, right?
That's correct. We have to account, just like the Water Management District on a more macro level accounts for everybody within 17 counties of the Water Management District. The county does it within the county unincorporated area, and we do it within the city limits.
But at the end of the day, I'm trying to figure out why they're even important in the sense of a systems here.
Well, the issue is, as long as we have capacity to cover them in the event something happened to their system, I think that's the only extent that they are important.
How can we cover
BSU
them?
Excuse me, let me finish, please. BSU quite often assumes the other facilities, so like Spring Creek subdivision. Glade Haven was actually a closure, but there are subdivisions where they do go through and actually close and then absorb that system. This area used to have many package plants and treatment facilities throughout the entire area, just like Hunter's Ridge. At this point, we're blessed that we only have one left. But I mean, that's where really the numbers that I think are critical is that BSU has coverage so that in the event something did happen to that, not just for any new development, but overlapping and insurance that if there was a
see.
situation that we
So
had coverage.
we may have to in the future at some time capture that system as well. So we're trying to stay informed as to what they have and don't have.
Right, it's a big
Yeah.
system. I mean,
Yeah.
no bigger though than other systems that at one time, I have to look at Mr. Colapietro because I think he probably has better history than I do of some of the bigger systems that used to be out here.
That's probably the largest of the private ones.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's.
but there used to be
the
a
others
lot
were-
of private
Oh,
ones.
yeah, there was, you had package plants on Pennsylvania, and they were all over the place.
Right.
Okay.
And that has been something that both Lee County Utilities prior to the incorporation, but they, even after the incorporation, they worked on, along with BSU, hand in hand, to try to get it so that those were absorbed.
Gotcha. Thank you very much.
I guess,
BSU pays a franchise fee to the city.
No, they do not. We don't charge a franchise fee as long as they are public. If anytime they ever go, they have a franchise with us. It's a
I
three-party
remember
franchise.
when we incorporated the city, we made it possible to collect
We made it
franchise
possible,
fees.
but we do not collect a franchise fee.
And we don't collect a franchise fee from,
We do from
Citrus Park.
FP&L. We collect from other entities, but we do not collect from.
do we
BSU.
collect from Citrus Park?
No.
Okay.
Um,
We're the two major water systems in the
Right.
area, okay.
does anybody know, in the case of an emergency or something, and they have a failure of their water system over in Citrus Park, how BSU can support them?
It would be something where, actually, that would be something the permitting agency, South Florida Water Management District, and FDEP would work with them on. It would be a buying, purchasing type situation, and the city does not get involved in that because it would be contract impairment.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything
And I
else?
also want to point out, that we don't have a franchise with Citrus Park because Citrus Park does not use city right-of-ways. It's a totally entombed private facility.
Yeah, okay. Carolyn, anything else?
There's a couple more things. Just curiosity question on page 12, sort of in the middle, there are 8 items that are, I was wondering, they cover 2 of those on another page. And may need help finding it. They cover a couple of those in the comp plan, page 22. It's on the top of my page 22. There's an A, B, and C, public education, drought-tolerant
It's
vegetation.
policy,
And I was just wondering why they-
2.1.3.
Yeah, I was just wondering why only the 3 items are in the comp plan, and there's 8 items here, and it says they're required public water safety.
Because the policy addresses those areas in which the city can control. And the city cannot control when Bonita Springs Utilities decides to implement a utility leak detection and repair program or other things that deal directly with those lines. What we can deal with directly with are those 3 that you identified, A, B, and C,
Okay.
on the top of page 22.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, let me see, we're almost done, I think.
We get up to page 17, I've got something there.
I'm almost there. Um, Yeah, I had some confusion on the 2 tables, because the top table is the city, and the bottom table is
What page is this,
service
Carolyn?
area, 16. And then the calculation in the middle, we already talked about. I don't have a problem with making projections. That's not the issue. But I was thinking, for instance, example, at the top table, table 1.1-6, the numbers, the peak flow, 88,144, and those are, I'm assuming those are people. It was interesting to me that our seasonal population is almost what it is normally. It's only 10,000 different? Is that,
Huh?
that's surprising to me. So you think that is correct?
I think
We
that's,
almost double our population in season.
unfortunately, I think that's the closest we can get, or as accurate as we can get. I would love to have more accurate information, but we don't have people register as part-time residents to keep that number. So all we can do is extrapolate data that we do have.
Wow, that was very surprising to me. And down at the bottom, the bottom table, where it says population, say for instance 2015, I was thinking that they would use the 88,144 that's in the top table. But they didn't.
No, ma'am, because the top table deals with population, meaning the numbers of people, and the bottom table deals with equivalent residential connections.
I believe you're, I'll
Yeah, but
Steph, if you don't mind,
but it
the-
says populations on the side.
Right, the number is used, the 88,144 is used you can see in the calculation in the middle. But then we have to include the rest of our service area. This
Okay.
is what BSU is preparing for, is the total of BSU
Okay,
service
and
area.
that goes back to my original comment, is why are we including the whole area when we're just Bonita Springs? Just something to think about.
Let me ask Kim a question. Are we able, if you prepare for the entire area and it turns out we need from some of that area, even though it's for preparation elsewhere, you don't have it bifurcated out? I mean, it's a shared pooled resource, correct?
It's, right, in order to try to figure out a more exact number of who is within the city and versus our entire service area,
Okay.
that would be pretty
I'm-
challenging. So we're
I-
we're reflecting here that we have the ability to service the city of Bonita Springs and the balance of our service area.
Okay.
Also, the bonds are repaid by everyone that's serviced in the entire area, not just Bonita Springs residents, which is the backbone of the finance of the BSU. So that is the people that are paying the tab as everybody that's being served.
But I'm going back to this as a Bonita Springs document, so, and you are pointing out in here that you do have capacity. to service everybody. But my thought was you ought to be using the Bonita Springs population, which, by the way, if it's 16% out of the area, 84% Bonita Springs, 16% outside of Bonita Springs, if you take the 88,000 and you do a thing with numbers and say 16% is out, you don't quite get the numbers to match.
Mr. Chairman?
You come up with doing it one way, you come up with a population for Bonita Springs is 84,000 something, or you come up with a different number for the
Right, well,
population in
the
total.
Citrus Park has been subtracted out.
Bob?
I think the,
Okay,
I think the intent here is to establish the overall capacity of Bonita Springs Utilities and how it relates to the city of Bonita Springs. If BSU cannot keep up with the entire franchise area, that definitely has effect on the city. So I think we need to have projections based on the service area in here.
Okay. Carol?
I mean, that's just my take on it. I think we need to have that.
And actually, I think you're both correct. This is the City of Bonita Springs Comprehensive Plan. You should be looking at the numbers within the City of Bonita Springs. I agree. Mr. Thinnis is correct in the fact that if Bonita Springs Utilities cannot provide service to the entire franchise area, it affects not only that area outside of the city, but it directly impacts the city as well. So there's really almost two things that you're looking at to address both of your points. One, can the utility provide water and wastewater services for the city? And two, can the utility provide water and wastewater services for its franchise area? And I think they're generally one and the same, but you do need to show that they can accommodate both.
would it be possible maybe to show Bonita Springs numbers and then add another paragraph and maybe without so many numbers, but explain that they have plenty of additional capacity to serve its whole area?
What we have found is that if we submit, we have to be accurate to the level of detail that we provide the state. And breaking it down strictly to what is within the incorporated area and what is outside of the incorporated area is not something that Bonita Springs Utilities necessarily concerns themselves with, because they are all their customers. So if we break it down to show what exactly is in and what exactly is out, those numbers have to be correct. And I cannot guarantee you that we have the data that, without significant research to go through parcel by parcel, that those numbers would be correct.
They're using a factor here, though,
Well,
16% or whatever.
Correct. What
8
you're
to
looking at
84%.
on the table on the top, that goes into the population numbers that we had discussed on the phone that come out of the University of Florida. And then when you come down to the table at the bottom, 1-7, that's what they use as their equivalent residential connections, and they do have that number. How many of those are within the incorporated area and how many of those are outside of the incorporated area, we can probably come pretty close, but I don't think pretty close is going to cut it as far as the state's concerned. If we do break it out, they're going to want to know specifically.
All right, I hear you. When I read it, I thought it was very confusing, and particularly a layperson picking it up and reading the numbers and expecting to see them to flow through as you talk about things, and they don't, they sort of jump around.
And I understand it, and this is rather unique, because you have a utility that has been around longer than the city and includes area not only within the city but also outside of the city. So we really have to fit that square peg in a round hole. There are areas, or there's portions of this document that are very straightforward and very easy to understand. But when you want to break it down specifically, as you were requesting, what exactly is within that incorporated boundary and what is outside of it, it becomes a little more difficult, because that has never been really a priority of Bonita Springs Utilities. And I can't say that I blame them, because they are all their customers and it makes no difference to them whether they're in the city or outside of the city. And someone would need to go back and go connection by connection to see where that connection was. What do you do for those properties that straddle the incorporated boundary? do you include them or not include them? And so it gets a little more gray,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
I understand. My thought was just they're already using the 84%. So why not apply that to those numbers? If that's acceptable in other places, it probably is just as acceptable here in the second table. And then if you wanted to put another table in and explain, that it's a whole BSU area, that would, I don't know. It just seems like you should be able to track your numbers through as you talk this linearly, this number came from there and this number goes, and
What
people
we've
could-
tried to do with this document is to keep it as simple as we can. And the reason why I've taken that approach is we have a utility that is responsible for providing water and wastewater services, and they've done a very good job. We need to include their information in our comprehensive plan so that we are compliant with state statute. And when that initial plan was submitted, it was accepted. It has been previously updated. We've tried to keep things as similar to the previous document as we can by providing new information for tables, but to keep the general format the same because we know it's been accepted and approved by the state. The more we veer from that, the more we potentially will have to address on the back end when they send us comments. I don't have an issue with making changes if it makes for a more complete or accurate document, but if this is something that is not going to directly impact how we're going to establish our policies in the comp plan, I would tend to shy away from that simply because it will not have that impact. If you're going to see an impact, if you're going to see a change in a table that's going to see a change in a policy, then I would be completely supportive of that. But we have a format and an outline of an acceptable document to the state. To the greatest extent possible, I'd like to kind of stay within those parameters, unless we're going to be uncovering additional information that's going to make changes in our policies.
I think what staff is saying, that this is a planning tool. I mean, the whole purpose of the comprehensive plan and doing the concurrency exercise is to have a planning tool. Now, if we were purchasing the utility or needing to have it to a different degree so that we could actually do the calculations, I would agree, you would need to have additional data in here. But putting additional data just for the purpose of putting additional data that has no additional value for the decision makers takes a document that should be a relatively high level and makes it a very complicated document, or more complicated than the planning tool that it's intended to be for.
Okay. Carolyn, you have anything else?
Well, let me just say, I do think having data in here that's Bonita Springs data alone does make it a better document. If you want to mention some other things and make it clear what you're talking about, that still makes it a better document. So being consistent to me is important. And people, if anybody reads this, and I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, I bet nobody in the state really reads it. I bet they just check it off. I know bureaucracy.
I don't know what
So
they're
maybe
do,
from-
but I can tell you that they have in the past looked at these and we have received comments back and we have
Well,
had
that's
to make
good.
changes.
That's a good thing, so.
Heck, I wish they didn't read them sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
But I was trying to, in my comments, to get rid of some of the confusion, because I really just feel like we should concentrate on Bonita Springs.
Well, and like I've told you before, I do not necessarily disagree with that, but
So-
the water treatment plant that provides water to residents of Bonita Springs provides water to residents outside of Bonita Springs.
Yeah, I
And
realize.
what the bottom line number that we take from this, when a new home comes in or a new business comes in, how much water do we need to account for as that development comes online? City attorney outlined that. That's the most important thing that we get from this. The rest of it, we are reflecting the intentions and future plans of Bonita Springs Utilities, but that is squarely within their court to make sure water is provided to their franchise area.
I think at this point, we're repeating ourselves here. If we could move it along, and
Well-
Don, you had a question on page 17?
Yeah, I got a little problem here. Under D, where we've eliminated the specification that says that the fire flow level of service is 5,000 gallons a minute for 4 hours. And we've now placed it under the American Water Works Association's guidelines. And I don't think that the American Water Works Association ought to be taking the place of NFPA. I have a lot of history with the Bonita Springs Fire Department, dating back to 1975. And I'd like to know what those guidelines are. I mean, the way it stands, the way it was, we're looking at 1.2 million gallons of capacity for the fire department. I would hope we never need that, but there's always the possibility that, we could have some kind of conflagration where we'd have every pumper in town sucking water out of those mains, and it doesn't tell me anything there.
I had the
think
same
that's-
question. In fact, I was wondering, what is the LOS?
Yeah, yep. And why is the American Water Works Association, why are they the governing?
If
or
we
the-
can refer to somewhere else, maybe that would be,
What I will do is check with Tim Fernandez from the fire district and ask him if he is satisfied with this. If the fire
Okay.
district is satisfied, then we're satisfied. If they're not, we'll make whatever changes they're looking for, because
Okay.
they're directly impacted.
Okay.
When the city adopts the Southwest Building Code, is that the correct name of it, Bob?
no,
It used to be, but
used to was.
they changed the rule in the round, I think it was 2000, and they basically said we're having just a statewide system.
Okay,
But-
but when the city adopts that for the city, does that not automatically bring in, like, the references from the American Water Works Association? Because I remember we had a discussion here some years ago about changing, and the city changed over and adopted the new building code system. So we sucked in all these other things with it as part of that.
I think the building code refers to another code.
550 and 650 will refer to NFPA, the Life Safety Code. And I
Right.
think it does have the AWWA as a separate code, but it'll take me a little bit of time to look it up.
And what I'll do is I'll double check to make sure that we're
Yeah.
referencing the correct
Okay,
code, and also that the fire district is satisfied with that code.
All right,
that's
good.
good enough.
Carolyn?
Yeah,
anything?
on that same one, wouldn't that be an important place to put in Citrus Park?
John, did you hear that?
I'm sorry, I was.
Wouldn't this area with fire protection be a good area to add Citrus Park? What is their status?
That will be a second question I ask the fire district.
Okay.
If they want additional information, it will be included.
I might say, when you do a development, unless you can't meet the fire flow, you're not going to do it. So I'm
Right, they
ass-
won't let you,
You can't do anything, so I'm assuming the fire flow's got to be consistent with the fire department's requirements.
and the thing is, we're not just talking fire hydrants where you have certain, you're gonna talk standpipes. I'm gonna
Yeah.
defer to the engineer because I'm
Yeah.
probably pretending to be an engineer again. But you're gonna have different suppression systems that have different levels of service. And so I don't know if by going with a certain amount, by water, pressure is gonna be, and actually I'll look at the architect, he knows that stuff. By going by that water flow, if that's correct, because you're gonna have different systems installed where you're gonna be able to deal with it with different issues, depending on what type of fire suppression system you utilize.
Okay.
And I actually think, except the next big table on page 18, there's nothing about Citrus Park either, so, but that's about it for the
All right.
comments on
great.
the backup.
Okay.
You're happy?
Any other comments or from the board?
I have one if we get back that far.
Go ahead.
Page 37, and it's about the middle of the page, and it's policy 1.2.8 on page 37. And essentially, we're changing the comp plan, the designation of the old county's community affairs. But the whole thing strikes me as being kind of odd, because it only applies to CPDs that were established before 2002. And what we're doing here, as I read it, is we're allowing the DEO to have a handle in the city's leveling of the impact fees for transportation. Am I reading that right?
It's interesting because I think that I think what you're reading, the change that was made, so it triggered probably looking at it, was that just changing DEO to DCA. But I think what you're looking at is the fact that this was probably a transitional policy from when the city incorporated and from our first comp plan where we needed the county's assistance. The county did our transportation. So you had a three-party type arrangement.
But I
And
look at that and
this
say, well,
policy is probably out
do
of
we
date.
really have anybody, is it really necessary for anyone else to be establishing the traffic comp
Well,
plan?
We do have to work with traffic concurrency with Lee County, state of Florida, because the county does have jurisdictional roads within our area, such as
The
Bonita Beach Road.
Bonita Beach Road, for
Grand,
example, yeah.
the US 41. So we do get traffic calculations from Lee County in order to figure out concurrency.
But this only applies to the CPDs that were in existence before 2002. And I think about that, that would be like Sunshine or,
Yeah.
so it would be a very, very limited in scope.
Right, actually, it should probably be in determining traffic concurrency, period. And, which is a broader scope, and maybe that's not so good either.
I don't think that's a good idea to let somebody else
Yeah, I have a mommy
help
AI
determine
complex,
the
too.
rates that the city's going to charge, because that should be the function of the city council.
I don't think it's rates, it's more of checking traffic analysis.
I think the whole thing is kind of out of place there.
I think
Well,
you're right.
I agree, and just to go quickly off topic and then to swing back around, the state's allowed, or currently allows municipalities and counties to use different calculations instead of concurrency. They still want to make sure that you provide level of service information, but you can do it a different way than we currently do it. Coming back to the policy itself, I wouldn't mind if this entire policy was struck until the city council determined if they wanted to go in a different direction, in which case this would be a good location for that new policy.
And I agree with you wholeheartedly, John. The thing that worries me is we are by ordinance delegating part of the authority of the city council to an outside party that we don't have any
Right.
control over.
I certainly think that it might be something, what John is suggesting is take out the policy that's in there now and instead add a policy that the city shall explore alternatives to concurrency
And
for its transportation.
if
courtesy,
somebody,
but-
yeah, if somebody wanted to keep the policy in place, but make a modification to reflect our current situation as opposed to our situation in 2003, 2004, we could go along those lines. If you wanted, I would be completely comfortable with taking the entire policy out of the comprehensive plan simply because the way it's phrased does not reflect our current situation.
Right, and would weaken future negotiations.
I
as
can
a
see
matter
how
of
it
fact.
would.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
It would take some of the power of the city council away. So I think,
strike it.
on John's recommendation, could we strike that policy
Sure.
entirely?
Everybody in favor of that?
Yes?
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
Need a motion or anything, or, no, just, we're all in agreement?
Just
Go.
part of the,
Done.
ow.
And that's my,
All right, anybody else have any comments? At this point, is anybody from the public have any comments?
No, you're right.
Okay, nobody from the public. Then at this point, what do we do?
You just transmit to public hearings, so you've reviewed, you determine whether it's consistent with it is the comprehensive plan.
I would make a motion
With
that
the
this
changes?
complies with the comp plan and with the modifications that we've made today.
Yeah.
Moved and seconded? Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, any other public comments on anything else?
Just a staff comment, couple things are going on. We do have some land development code changes that will be coming to you soon. one dealing with outdoor flea markets as opposed to indoor flea markets, or farmer markets, and one with large retail, and I believe, is there something else coming up? Oh, yes, we have a zoning in progress right now to set up something similar to Bonita Beach Road Corridor, but on US 41, that's scheduled for City Council on April 16th, just to make sure certain uses during a 90 days, but we anticipate I'll have an ordinance drafted pretty soon on that will deal with those issues, mainly to try to have good buffering policies in effect. I will not be here May 8th, and since some of those ordinances, I was hoping you could move your meeting to maybe the next Thursday, please?
Which would be what, the 15th?
I believe so.
Let's see, when's Mother's Day?
It's earlier, it's May 9th, or no, it can't be May 9th. Your meeting's May 8th,
It's Sunday, so
yeah,
it'd be about
11th.
the 10th. If we're gonna move this, can we move it till after Mother's Day?
that's what I'm asking you to
Mother's
do.
Day is the 11th.
Okay, can we move it to the,
May
We're
15th?
talking about the 15th.
that'd just be wonderful with me.
Is
Yay.
that okay with everybody? Change it from the 8th to the 15th?
Yeah.
I'll be out of town.
You'll be out of town?
I'll be out of town.
Everybody else okay with it? Okay, so the next meeting will be held on May 15th?
That's
That's-
May 15th, actually.
Yeah, May 15th,
I'm looking at my schedule.
okay.
Oh, every year, it's.
Mr. Chairman, maybe I can get the community development to get me a copy of it before I leave, and then maybe I can just shoot them any comments I have.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Just an electronic copy of it?
Of the one coming up for the 15th.
Yeah, just a
Oh,
copy
okay,
of what's
sure.
coming up.
Yeah.
When are you leaving, Bob?
I'll leave on the 13th.
Yeah, well, it should be out before then, I
Oh,
would
yeah,
think.
yeah.
Okay, anything else to come before the committee? And we're adjourned.
In Word?
Yeah.